All right, I just want to take some time to give some love to Nikola Jokic because he is playing out of his mind this season. You got to say he's one of the front runners for MVP so far early on this year with the way he's playing. I mean, he's putting up stupid video game numbers right now. He's averaging a triple double as a center in the NBA, which is just unbelievable right now. I mean, he's averaging 24 points a game, 11 rebounds, and 10.4 assists per game. So, what we saw in the bubble this past season with him really stepping up and help leading the Denver Nuggets all the way to the Western Conference Finals, that wasn't a fluke. Um, a lot of people were wondering if Denver can keep that momentum and be one of the contenders for the Western Conference this season. Be one of the teams that can give the Lakers a hard time. They haven't really fulfilled that end of the bargain as a team yet. I think they're sitting at 6-6 right now, which is like I think there's like a four-way tie right now in the Western Conference at 6-6. So while the team is not really fulfilling the expectations that they had built from their performance in the bubble, Nikola Jokic is doing his thing, and he is continuing the success, his ascension that the world saw based on his performance in the bubble. He's carrying that over to the season, and this is just another star player taking another step in his progression. Everyone pretty much considered him a superstar already at this point, a top 10 NBA player, and he is certainly, living up to that end of the bargain. I mean, he is widely regarded as the greatest big man passer ever. I mean, I wasn't old enough to see Arvydas Sabonis in his prime. When he joined the Portland Trailblazers in the late 90s, he was already well past his best playing days. But we saw a lot of great passing out of Sabonis even in his twilight years of his career, but nothing to the level of Nikola Jokic with combination of outlet passing, precision bounce passing in the half court set, and just the creativity that he has as a passer in this league is just something that most point guards don't even have. And yet, this is a 7-footer that can pass the ball like this. It's just incredible. Along with the passing, he has really tremendous touch as a shooter. I mean, he has a three-pointer, he has a floater, he has a hook shot. He can score at all three levels. Just a beast in the mid-range, as we saw in the bubble and as we're continuing to see this season. So he has it all as a shooter and a passer, which makes him just the ultimate threat on offense. And to go along with that, this season he's averaging 1.9 steals a game, which is by far his career high so far. So is that a sign of his defense starting to catch up a little bit with his offense? If that's the case, then, I mean, watch out, NBA. Now I know, like I said, the Denver Nuggets are not really playing up to, I guess, expectations that a lot of people had for them after reaching the Western Conference Finals this past season. But Nikola Jokic, they have a good nucleus of a duo between Jokic and Jamal Murray. I think Jamal Murray is starting to round into form as well, and he's posting up career high numbers in scoring this season. So the Denver Nuggets have a really solid and secure duo for the foreseeable future moving forward. So they got to feel really good about that. And like I said, he's the early front runner for MVP, one of the early front runners for MVP. I made a video a few weeks back how I thought Luka Doncic was going to win the MVP this season. It just seemed like to me all the stars were aligning for Luka to win the MVP award. And while I will still hold on to that, I got to give Nikola Jokic a lot of love in the MVP race for this season because of just the numbers that he's putting up and the way that he was already a top 10 player going into the season, and he is taking his game to another level, which is really exciting to see from a guy who is just about to turn 26 years old. So, having said that, I want to pose a question to you watching, and that is, who would you take over Nikola Jokic for this season if you had to build an NBA team? Now, I made a preliminary list, and I will just share that with you. So I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to follow that up with who would you take over Nikola Jokic going forward in the future? And I think that is going to present two totally different answers. So the first question: who would you take over Jokic this season? My list looks like this: LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant. I mean, he looks like the Kevin Durant of old so far. So that already, vaults him back into the top three discussion. Kawhi Leonard, Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, Luka Doncic, and James Harden. Now, this is solely based on skill level and just individual ability as a basketball player and what these players can contribute to various teams. I'm not really, taking into account like team chemistry or load management or injury risk. If that was the case, then maybe honestly, like a guy like James Harden or even like a Kawhi Leonard with his history of load managing, I might even put Jokic over those two guys. But if we're strictly talking about skill as a basketball player, then I think I would have to put these eight players above Jokic, even though he's having such a monster season. If I had to build an NBA team, and I could probably be talked out of maybe like two or three of these guys. So at the very highest, he's going to be like a top six player in the league for this season only. Of course, based on his performance, it's the MVP race is not just, like I said, it's not who's the best player in the league award. It's who's the best story in the NBA and who's having the best individual year. Though I believe Jokic is probably like top two, top three in the MVP race so far, I still think like about five or six of the players that I named on this list, I would have to take over him if I had to build a team for this season only. So let's go to the second question. Who would you take over Nikola Jokic going forward in the future? And that list dwindles down significantly, okay? By the way, that first list, I made a huge omission of a player, and that's obviously Giannis. And that might be a crazy thing for me to say that I would take Jokic over Giannis for this season. But to be honest, Jokic is more of a finished product at this point and more of a complete basketball player, particularly on the offensive end. And in this league where offense is more important than defense on an individual level, you can say, I think Jokic's skill set to build a team around is going to be a lot easier than Giannis. But I bring up Giannis because the second question of who would you take over Jokic going forward in the future, I think Giannis is still a player that I would take over Jokic going forward in the future, even though they are basically the same age. And like I said, Jokic is more of a complete product right now. I still am holding out on the hope that Giannis is going to figure it out and really become... I think there's still a lot of potential for him to become a super devastating offensive player when it matters the most in the playoffs. And like I said, I might be speaking blasphemy right now and talking crazy because this is a guy that just averaged 30 points a game last season. But I think we all know that he's having issues at the free throw line. He's having issues shooting outside jumpers. And right now there's a playbook on Giannis in the playoffs. Just build a wall around him and try to make him beat you from outside shooting. And that has worked to the Bucks' detriment in these past two seasons. Of course, there's like different factors involved, like coaching and offensive scheme and all that, and the players that are around Giannis. But I think for the woes of the Milwaukee Bucks, recent postseason trips, Giannis has to shoulder a good amount of the blame there just by being the best player on that team. But nevertheless, I would still probably take Giannis as a future over Nikola Jokic at this point. And probably the two other players that I would have to take over Jokic to start a team going forward in the future is Luka and Anthony Davis. Luka's the obvious one, right? He's still like 22 years old, like just ridiculously young a player, and already like averaging 39 and 9, which is just outrageous. And then you have Anthony Davis, who really proved himself to be one of the top 5 players in the league based on the last postseason, and such a devastating two-way player, can dominate both on offense and defense. 27 years old, so he still has like 5 to 7 years of like true prime basketball, you know. So I would take those 3 players over Jokic at this point. And I have like 2 honorable mentions in Devin Booker and SGA. I think those 2 guys, being how young they are and how accomplished they are 2 players that you really have to consider as some of the top players as far as like futures are concerned. But in any event, I just wanted to give a shout out to Nikola Jokic because I think he's just a complete baller, and not enough people are talking about him in the NBA. Of course, you know, James Harden to the Nets is dominating the airwaves right now, but quietly, Nikola Jokic is posting up numbers that we have not seen a center ever have. You know, so he's doing this thing out there in Denver. I think this team is going to figure it out and end up being somewhere in the top 3 to 6-ish seed in the Western Conference, and they're going to be someone to deal with in the playoffs, especially if Jokic keeps this up. So that's all I want to say in this video. Let me know what you think of Nikola Jokic and whose future you would take over him at this point. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.